It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, great to have you in studio with us today. We're going to do a reminder about the Prescott National Forest with Pete Gordon. He's the Fire Staff Officer for Prescott National Forest. Welcome back.
Pleasure.
Been about a month.
Yep.
About a month. Last time you were here, we were dry conditions, and kind of wildfire season seemed like it was really super ramping up, and it was warm temperatures, warmer than normal for that time of year. And I kind of felt like it was going to be kind of a similar wildfire season that we'd seen in the years past. And then all of a sudden, May hit.
Yeah, we've been blessed.
Yeah,
no doubt. Been blessed with good weather. So we had a pretty good winter as far as precipitation goes, and then as April rolled around, typically we get the winds like we saw, and temperatures started to creep up a little bit. And you're absolutely right. We thought we were headed for a fairly typical season, certainly behind where we were last year, and no restrictions. But then May's been phenomenal. Looking at the weather stations the last 30 days, anywhere from 2 inches to 2/3 of an inch across the entire county. So it was pretty phenomenal, and frankly setting records for winter precip from January to May this year. Some of our weather stations a little over 11 inches of rain. Crown King, Cherry area, almost 10 inches of rain in the 4-month.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah, it's fairly phenomenal. And this May, not unusual to see a little bit of precipitation or a dip in temperatures, but the amount we saw this May was I'd say unprecedented. In some cases, we set some records.
I mean, over the last few years, if you think about it, I think it was last year, April 18th, we went into fire restrictions. Yep. There were no campfires for designated or dispersed camping. I think designated campgrounds, you could still have a campfire.
Correct.
But April 18th was kind of the kickoff for that. And last time you were here, and we had Vic and Brady from Coconino National Forest as well, they were talking about how May and June, those are the big danger months, and they typically are. May and June are the bad months, and this year we kind of got lucky with May.
Sure. As we were talking just before we started, very optimistically, we've made it halfway through the fire season without a lot of activity or resource damage, and thankfully no damage to values or injuries to people. So that's a very positive note. Half the season is over.
With that said, right there, just kind of a question popped into my head. Now, last time you were here, we talked about the resources that are available, and there are plenty of resources available for the wildfire season in Arizona. What happens with some of those resources when we do see a month like May happen where, I mean, we have had not as much wind as we normally do for spring, but we have had some. Plenty of rain, as we've talked about. We've even had snow in the high elevations. San Francisco's peaks are still covered with snow, I think 2/3 of the way down right now. They're very, very covered. So some of those resources maybe aren't quite as needed right here, right now.
Yeah, they're always on standby, of course, but the fact that there's not a whole lot of activity nationwide, they're not traveling to other fires. We certainly expect that'll happen as the rest of the country. Fire season tends to migrate around the country as we move into July and August and September towards the northwest, the Great Basin and the Northern Rockies. But right now, it's fairly quiet across the entire country, a little bit of activity in Florida from what I heard. So they are at home, but it gives us an opportunity to get a lot of resource work done on the forest while they're here.
That's what I was going to ask you. So that's what's going on. And I mean, these folks aren't just sitting at the station wondering, okay, just waiting for a fire. There's other things for them to do.
Yeah, not at all. They exactly. They start the season, as we talked last time I was here, getting through a lot of critical training. Certainly they'll take advantage of some of this time without fire to do some more training, to boost the training they usually do anyway. But then they're also out doing resource work, either thinning, prepping for the prescribed fire season, other work, some trail work or fence work, whatever's needed across the forest with all the functions. So yeah, they're staying plenty busy. We've got plenty of work to do. We're the Prescott National Forest is heavily engaged with some extra funding that we got mid-year this year to do some restoration work in the name of thinning and some mastication work, and then prescribed burning we anticipate doing this fall. So a lot of prep work being done out there.
Okay, all right. But they're here, and they'll stay here unless, of course, we have a big fire and they have to go someplace else. Correct. And speaking of fire, I thought it was really odd that we're sitting here talking about how wet May has been. This last weekend, Memorial Day weekend, was not what you would hope to be your first, kickoff weekend for summer, but there it was. The temperatures were nice. It was cooler. We had rain. We had slushy snow. I think even ADOT pulled out plows to take care of I-40 near Williams over the weekend at some point in time because it was still snowing. But while all that's going on, Pete, we get 50-acre wildfire just north of Flagstaff, which you wouldn't think to yourself that that's even possible, but there it is. You've got rain and snow coming down on one side, and it just shows, I think, the diverse landscape we have too here.
Absolutely.
You got rain and snow coming down one side, and then boom, you got 50-acre wildfire burning over here instead. So wildfires are still a possibility, right?
Absolutely, and you hit on one of the key things, and that's the diversity in our ecosystems and the terrain. Just within a few miles across the state of Arizona, due to topography, the weather's could be drastically different within a few miles. The Mogollon Rim, the rim country over Sedona, is a big influence of what can happen north or south of the rim. And then, of course, the ecosystem diversity. What we tend to see is a pretty quick rebound or availability for burning in the finer fuels, the grasses, the needles. They are going to react the quickest to sunny or dry weather, and that's where we have seen fires. So we as well, we haven't had anything as large as 50 acres, but within a couple of days of rain, we actually this last weekend had a couple of abandoned campfires for a 10th acre or less, but nonetheless, as people have left carelessly some fires, they creep around, and we have to go and take care of them. So it's always possible, and as June approaches, it's only going to take a matter of days with these high temperatures that are coming, that our finer fuels, our grass country, the brush country, is going to be pretty primed.
What is the current, what's the word I'm looking for? You see them on the signs you're driving down the road next to the Forest
Fire
Service.
danger?
Yes. What's the current fire danger on Prescott National Forest?
It varies where we are on the forest, but generally speaking, we're between moderate and high. Again, to give us a couple days, we'll probably be hitting the high on the Prescott side of Mingus Mountain. In the Verde Valley, we're probably sitting at the moderate right now, tending towards high with those grass fuels. And it's only going to take, as we talked about the weather coming this week, as the temperatures start creeping into 80s and 90s, it won't take long, and we'll probably stay steady at the high level for a few weeks, and then I would anticipate first, second week of June getting into the very high.
Now, we have no restrictions right now.
Correct.
Anywhere on our national forest for anything, which is very unusual. Maybe we should take our first break. Let's take our first break. Prescott National Forest Fire Staff Officer Pete Gordon's in studio today. I'm Paul David. We'll take a quick 2-minute break, countywide, back in just a couple minutes.
Right, mi cariño. So like I said, everything I learned about cooking, I learned from Grandma's empanadas. Shall we go again?
Yep.
Mix the beef with the onions with the peppers with the paprika with the garlic with the oregano with the cumin. Got it?
Got it.
Throw on the olives, stir, season, stir again, pour out the flour, roll out the dough, make a circle, drop in a fistful of filling, fold over, press down, and ta-da!
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
Why is my son having trouble in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with my son over his homework.
Home, walk, restaurant. Need a review?
No. He's smart, but his mind wanders.
7 wonders of the world.
Why don't you understand me?
I do. I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
Welcome back to Countywide. Pete Gordon with the Prescott National Forest in studio with us today, getting an update on the Prescott National Forest and basically just reminding everybody to be careful with fire. Like I said before the break, we had a 50-acre fire north of Flagstaff over the weekend. I had a couple of friends that went camping up on the Coconino National Forest, and I kind of lump all the forests together because we were talking before the show, as you leave the Verde Valley, you're kind of entering Coconino, Prescott, Tonto. All those forests are kind of our forests to go recreate in. But then they went out camping. Some folks were camped just down the way from them, and Memorial Day they got packed up and left. And my friend Mike was like, "What is that over there?" And there's smoke. Goes over there, and it's not even that the campfire they tried to put it out. It's just sitting there burning. They made breakfast, packed up, and left, and it's just burning away. So obviously we still need to talk about this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. On my way down this morning, I heard the soundbite from Flagstaff Fire Department that you did.
Mark Johnson.
Yeah. And his message is right on, is to don't become complacent. Don't be fooled. While we were talking good news and optimistic that half of the fire season is over, the simple fact is, as I explained with the light fuels, typical June in the Southwest, there will be a fire season of some sort, without a doubt, come June. And we need to be careful, and that is just careless to leave a campfire burning without any attempt to put it out. Depending on the location of that campfire, the results could be catastrophic, even following a few weeks of rain. So we need to be vigilant, and I would ask all our visitors, it doesn't matter what forest, doesn't have to be the Prescott, just be careful. Common sense, think about things, and put out your campfires.
Now, a month ago, you could drive up and down the interstate and the grasses would be tall and brown. And now, as you do that, they're tall and green. I think that might also be kind of an indicator for people going back and forth to the forest and stuff like that. Go, well, look how green the grass is, and it's not going to burn. Is that's? I mean, the rain and the snow and stuff coming. That case makes me think, okay, the ground is really saturated. I'm pretty safe out here from starting a fire, but is that really the case?
It's a kind of a yes and no answer, to be honest with you. Certainly, the moisture has helped. That's what we've been talking about. The moisture helps, and it has, as you're seeing. The vegetation is responding to that moisture by putting on new growth and greening up most of the species. However, that growth then becomes fuel as it dies off. And there are areas where, despite the green grass, there may be enough older, decadent, or dead material among the green grass that fires can carry. It's fairly common, especially under the ponderosa pine, where the needles or needle drape, even in our chaparral species underneath the ponderosa, might be a little wet, might be a little moist on the ground, but as those needles dry out, like the grasses rather quickly, as they're draped over the chaparral or laying on the forest floor, they're pretty available despite the green grass that may be dispersed among it. So again, the message is just be vigilant and don't let your guard down. We are certainly in a better place than we were last May or typical May, but it doesn't mean we're out of the woods, pardon the pun.
Have we ever not had a wildfire season?
Gosh, I want to say 1997 was a lesser season, kind of like we're seeing now with a lot of rain in May. But I feel pretty confident in telling you, probably in recorded history anyway, I don't think we've ever escaped a June without some sort of wildfire season. Certainly lesser seasons than others without catastrophic fires and loss of property or lives. Those seasons certainly have happened, but I feel pretty confident in telling you about every June in the Southwest, typical, and we know the history of lightning fires come late June and into July. There's always been a fire season.
Yeah, that's still coming up around the corner, isn't it? Yeah, monsoon, okay. Now, you go out and you measure the fuels. How often do you do that?
We try to do it on a weekly basis, and fairly successful in that. And this is not common, or I should say unique to the Prescott. All of the forests do this across many places on the forest. We try to get a reasonable sample across the geography and among the different fuels.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but it is on a periodic basis, and we usually try to do it weekly. We will collect the live fuels and measure them against their weight when they're dead or dried out. We can actually bake them. We have instruments where we can bake the fuels, pull some needles, pull some leaves, and bake them and see the difference in the weight. And that gives us an idea of how much moisture the live fuels are holding. We can do the same. It's not as common. We usually use weather data and do an estimate of the dead fuels, like the needles and leaves that are littered onto the floor of the forest. We measure those as well, but it's a little bit different process.
So how long does it take for these grasses? Okay, now we're seeing the temperatures change. I mean, I came back from vacation to the 40s and 50s, and now as this week has progressed, I've noticed now we got Flagstaff at 72 today, Cottonwood at 92, and I think Flagstaff is almost 80 by Saturday, and then Cottonwood is reaching the mid to upper 90s. So, I mean, it's, you know, Arizona. It's a flip of a switch. You know, spring's over, here's summer, you know, there it is. So how long will it take, looking at the grasses that we have had over the last month grow? Because, I mean, driving back and forth, I've watched the hillsides literally go from brown to this really nice light green and dark green in some locations. And the medians of the interstate look really nice too. But how long does it take those kinds of fuels to dry out? Let's say without the strong winds.
Without winds.
Just the temperatures.
The live fuels, the green grasses are the fuel that is currently alive and growing. That obviously will take days, if not a week or two. What we really need to see is the hot temperatures, which frankly are expected. They're coming, as we're seeing this weekend. Phoenix is going to finally hit triple digits. So those hot temperatures for a week or two, we'll really start to see the green start turning brown and dulling. And probably for a few weeks till we see monsoons. That's going to be typical. The dead fuels, the dead needles, the dead leaves, the dead cured grasses that are out there from last monsoon, those literally is a matter of hours. We call those 1 hour fuels when we measure fire behavior. We have ones, tens, hundreds, and 1,000-hour fuels, and it all has to do with the diameter or the size of those fuels. I won't bore you or the viewers with the science behind that 1 hour calculation, but it has to do with the exchange of about 60% of the moisture contained in that fuel. But for our sake, really, it's a matter of hours for dead grasses, dead needles to react and dry out to be available. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So a dead twig that gets soaked by a storm, after it's dried up, the next day it's nice and sunny, it'll just take a couple hours for that to just be dried right out again.
Yeah, and so that's why our concern, one of the big messages probably for this year that I don't think I've said yet today is we really need to be vigilant in the high desert and low desert country of the state, or portions of our state, where we have tall grasses among the brush, or underneath the oak savannas of southern Arizona, Sunset Point, right here south of us. It won't take but a few weeks, and I think we're going to see that brown up. And as you know, it's a typical place to see roadside fires.
Yeah, Sunset Point, I think they've had a couple already right now. That's actually closed I-17 a few times now this year so far. So I think really the message for today's show, and the reason I wanted you to come back a month after you were here already, was to just reiterate the fact that we do need to stay alert.
Sure.
Because wildfire season is still a possibility. I mean, through the month of June, obviously it's going to get warmer and warmer and warmer, so we've got to really think about the month of June. The danger's still ahead. And then July, good old monsoon shows up. We love the monsoon season, but then we've got lightning strikes going on. So I guess we've got that to wait for as well.
Yep, so always a potential that we'll see lightning ahead of the rain for as much as a week or two before we see enough significant moisture come from the Gulf to really set in the storms. We can get the convective activity cause the lightning, and sometimes it comes without the rain. So we'll have to see what that brings. And you know, I think the other message, if I could today, is just take advantage of this time to treat your property. We aren't in restrictions within any of the agencies, the fire departments, the county, the state land department, the Forest Service. We're not in restrictions in this part of the state, so it's a great time to use the equipment, mow the lawn, trim back the brush, and get rid of the debris.
Okay, all right, let's take our second break. Fire Staff Officer for the Prescott National Forest, Pete Gordon, in studio today. Stick around, Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
So don't accept defeat. Now you can get covered and still buy me treats.
You take care of your pets. Now it's their turn to take care of you. Visit getcoveredamerica.org to learn about your health insurance options.
Welcome back to Countywide. We have just a couple of minutes left in the program. Pete Gordon with the Prescott National Forest in studio today. We're just kind of getting an update on the Prescott National Forest. Things are looking good right now, moderate to high. I think Coconina was saying low to moderate right now, so we're doing really well, but we want to keep doing well.
Correct.
You enjoy being home on the weekends, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Rather instead of fighting a fire and running around for that kind of stuff?
Many of my colleagues or my employees might not like to hear me say that, but I certainly, at this point in my career, I enjoy being home on the weekends with family. So.
On the weekends, are we having additional patrols? Do we have that going on, or was that kind of pulled back because it has been so wet?
Yeah, we have not had the need. We certainly had lined ourselves up in April when I was here last and put in requests for additional funding, anticipating a pretty good fire season by this point. Obviously didn't come to fruition, so we've abstained from using those funds and bringing in extra resources. But we are fully staffed. As a matter of fact, we have 5 patrols across the forest, sharing a couple here in the Verde Valley. And they're out. Heard them on the radio this morning going into service as far away as Crown King. So they're out there, and with that, plus our other field-going folks, we kind of share some of that field-going information and public contact with our recreation staff. And they are out. As a matter of fact, I heard some of their activity on the radio this morning as early as 7 o'clock, making public contacts to folks that are out camping. So.
Okay, my friend said that he saw that over the weekend too, where the Forest Service is going up and pulling up into camps and talking with them, and they'd actually jot down license plate numbers.
Yeah, sometimes we'll do that to just make a note, especially if we see a vehicle and maybe an active camp spot with no one around. Folks are just making notes, as we would want our public to be vigilant. Our folks patrolling the woods are being vigilant.
It's a great idea.
Keeping notes.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Everybody just be careful, because right now we had the 50-acre fire north of Flagstaff over the weekend. There's the Blevins fire right now in the Tonto National Forest down by Roosevelt Lake. I know my father-in-law is probably working on that one right now. He's the fire chief down there. And so, yeah, you know, and we've had several others. While I was on vacation, you were on vacation, there was a couple in southern Arizona. So it is happening out there. It may not be happening right here in our backyards yet, but this is June. It's going to continue to heat up. Fuel's going to dry out, so when you're out in the forest, put your campfire out.
Absolutely.
And then when you're driving down the road, don't drag your chains, flat tires, try to stay off the side of the road. Don't park over tall grasses, because your catalytic converter and stuff could set those on fire. Muffler. Don't throw your cigarette butts out the window. Get a can or something in there to deal with that. And am I missing anything? Dragging chains, rims, flat tires?
Just the yard work that we were talking about just before we went to break.
Get that taken care of.
Make sure your equipment's in good order. You know, Arizona is a lovely place. A lot of folks own stock or animals, and it's a good time to fix fences and do some welding. It's amazing how many wildfires are started by welding. So just be vigilant out there. Clear the area. Have a little water beside you if you're doing some welding on some fences. But it's a good time to take advantage of doing that work. But make sure that equipment's in good order. Watch the rocks. I think we talked about that last year. The simple things of using a bladed lawnmower or a bladed trimmer across a rock throws a spark, and you know, we know what can happen.
I tell people who don't live here, and they are so surprised by that. Pete, great to see you again. Thank you so much. If we need to, maybe we'll get you back again before summer's over and kind of maybe recap the whole thing.
You bet.
All right.
Happy to do it.
That's today's Countywide. I'm Paul David. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next time.